afternoon. You may be seated. And Ms. Green, I'm sorry, Ms. Cross, have you completed your questioning?
I have, thank you.
Mr. Clegg, you may cross-examine if you wish.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. Mr. Sneiderman, my name is Tom Clegg. I am one of Andrea's attorneys, and I have a number of questions for you, sir. If you have any difficulty understanding what I am saying, please let me know, and I'll do my best to rephrase it or make it more comprehensible, okay?
Okay.
Did I hear you correctly to say that on the morning of the 18th, you returned a call to your stockbroker?
Yes, sir.
Okay. What time would that have been, sir?
Would have been after I was told Rusty had died, so it would have been after 11.
But you would have obviously let Steve know prior to returning that phone call.
Steve
right?
was my first contact.
Now, if I understand correctly, well, let me ask you this. When is it that Andrea and Rusty met?
I believe when Rusty was a sophomore at Indiana.
And what year would that have been, if you recall, sir?
Graduated in 84, about 1985.
If you could just try to speak up so we can...
About 1985.
19... when?
85.
85?
No, I got to think about when he graduated from high school and when he graduated from college.
Okay, again, we need to be able to hear you, and I apologize, my hearing is not the best. So when is it that Rusty and Andrea...
When he was a sophomore at Indiana University.
Yes, sir. And what year, again, would that have been?
Be 94.
And was Andrea a student at the Indiana University as well?
Yes.
Okay. Now, at that time, your family was living in the Cleveland area?
We still do.
Okay, and have lived there continuously since, is that
Yes.
correct? Okay. Did you meet Andrea while she and Rusty were dating in college?
Yes.
Can you describe for the ladies and gentlemen of the jury how many times you would have met her while they were still in college?
5, 6.
Okay. And what would the circumstances be? Would you guys go to Indiana University and meet with Rusty and Andrea, or would they come to your home?
Both of them. She was at our house a couple times.
Can you recall for the ladies and gentlemen of the jury how many times Andrea would have been a guest in your home while she and Rusty were still in college?
It would be 2 or 3 times, and then she worked in Cleveland one summer.
When is it that she lived in Cleveland, sir?
I believe right after her junior year.
Okay. And that was while she was still in college, is
Yes.
that correct?
Yes.
And would that have been when Rusty had finished his college
Yes.
education? Okay. Is that correct, sir?
Yes.
Was Rusty a year or so ahead of Andrea?
Yes.
So when he's a sophomore,
She's a freshman.
correct?
Yes.
And do you remember or recall how it is that they were supposed to have met?
They met at the Hillel.
Okay. And is that a Jewish student organization?
Yes.
Okay. You are Jewish, your wife is Jewish, Andrea is Jewish, her
Yes.
parents are Jewish, correct?
Yes.
Okay. During the summer when she was living in Cleveland, was Rusty living at your house?
Yes.
Okay. Was Andrea living at your house?
No, she had an apartment.
Okay. Was Andrea a frequent guest at your home during that particular summer, sir?
Yes.
Can you estimate for the ladies and gentlemen of the jury the number of times that she was a frequent guest?
20, 25.
Okay. Did she and Rusty seem to get along well?
Yes.
Okay. Did you like Andrea back then?
Yes.
Were they, in your opinion, well suited to one another?
Yes.
And at some point after Andrea graduated from college, did Rusty stay in Cleveland or did he go somewhere else?
They moved, after Andrea graduated from Indiana, they moved to Chicago, lived together in Chicago.
And what was Rusty doing at that time, if you know?
He was a consultant for Deloitte.
Okay. And what was Andrea doing at that time, if
She
you know?
was doing computer consulting for Deloitte also.
So they were both working for the same company, is that correct, sir?
Yes.
Okay. And were they living together in Chicago?
Yes.
Did you and your wife have occasion to go visit them in Chicago?
Yes.
While they were living there?
Yes.
Can you estimate the number of times that you would have visited them in Chicago?
3 or 4,
How long were they in Chicago for, sir, if you recall?
about 2 years.
Did they ever come visit from Chicago to Cleveland during that period of time?
Yes,
And when I say they, I mean Rusty and Andrea.
yes,
If Rusty came, would Andrea come with him?
yes,
Were they, during that period of time, inseparable?
yes,
Did they appear to you to have a very good relationship with one another?
yes,
At some point, did Rusty move to the Boston, Massachusetts area?
yes.
Do you recall when that would have been, sir?
He just had his 20th anniversary of his graduation, so that would have been 12, yeah, been about 90, 94, something like that.
You think they would have moved to Boston around 1994?
I believe so.
Okay. Now, I apologize, maybe I misunderstood. I thought you had said earlier that you had thought Rusty and Andrea met around 1994. Is that correct, sir?
Yeah, so he would have been later. It would have been 2000 when they moved there.
Okay. You don't recall the exact year that they actually moved to Boston, is that correct?
Should be 2000.
Okay. And did Rusty go to Harvard Business School?
Yes.
How long does it take to complete the course
Two
of
years.
study?
2 years. He graduated in 2002.
Okay. And at some point, did Andrea and Rusty get married?
Yes.
When did they get married, sir?
They would have been married in 2001 on December 30th.
December 30th of 2001. Okay. So would it be fair to say that their 10th anniversary would have been on December 30th of the year 2011?
Just after Rusty passed away.
I'm sorry, what, sir?
Just after Rusty died.
Okay. Well, Rusty died in 2010, did he not, sir?
Yes. So it would have been.
Now, I'm presuming that you were at the wedding, it was at Palm Beach, or West Palm Beach?
Yes.
Okay. And let me ask you this, on December 30th of the year 2010,
Time to rock and roll, do you get it? Good times, right?
3 or 4 times a year.
3 or 4 times a year? Were there occasions when they came up to Cleveland?
Yes.
How often would they come up to Cleveland?
2 or 3 times a year.
Did you notice during that period of time any sort of tension or difficulty between the two?
No.
Did they appear to be happy with one another?
Yes.
Did they appear to be in love with one another?
Yes.
Did they appear to be very much in love with one another?
I would just say that they were in love.
Okay.
Very much is subjective.
At some point they had 2 children, right?
Yes.
I guess Sophia is the older, correct?
Yes.
When was she born?
She was 5 in 2010, so she would have been born in 2005.
Okay. So what, do you recall her birthday?
August 25th.
Okay, and how about Ian? When was he born, sir?
He would have been 2 in 2010, so he would have been born in 2008. His birthday is on October 18th.
Okay. Now, I'm sorry, what day?
October 18th.
Okay. Now, you came down, I presume, after the birth of the children to see the new grandkids, right?
Yes.
And did your visits become more frequent once the grandkids were born, or did they remain about the same?
About the same.
Okay. And during that period of time, did Andrea and Rusty appear to be in love with one another?
Yes.
Did both of them appear to be devoted to their children?
Yes.
Does that include both Rusty and Andrea?
Yes.
Okay. Have you ever known a time when Andrea did not appear to be devoted to her children?
Nope.
You were going to come to Atlanta in November of 2010 for Thanksgiving. Is that correct, sir?
Yes.
Do you recall the day that you would have been scheduled to arrive?
I think we had talked about driving down, and we would come down on Wednesday before Thanksgiving.
Do you recall ever having been asked by either Rusty or Andrea to help take care of the kids on the Wednesday before Thanksgiving?
No.
You do not recall ever receiving an email from Rusty in that regard?
No.
Okay. Did you have any other trips planned with Andrea and Rusty for a date beyond November the 18th of 2010?
We had a tentative plan to go to Disney World with the kids and them.
Okay. And who were you planning to go to Disney World with?
Rusty, Andrea, Sophia, and Ian.
Okay. So it would have been Andrea, Rusty, Ian, and Sophia?
Yes.
Okay. And were you and your wife going to go?
Yes.
Do you know if the Greenbergs, Andrea's parents, were going to go?
I do not believe they were going.
Okay. Did you in fact go?
No.
When is it that these plans had been discussed to go to Disney World?
In October?
October of 2010?
Yes.
And when is it, if you recall, sir, when is it that the trip to Disney World, the proposed trip to Disney World, was going to take place?
I believe it was in March.
Okay. So in October of 2010, you are communicating with Andrea and Rusty, correct?
Yes.
And they are discussing with you and your wife, Marilyn, the prospect of all of you taking the two kids to Disney World in March of the following year. Is
Yes.
that correct? To your knowledge, was Andrea aware of that plan?
Yes.
Now, let me ask you about November the 18th. You are home at that time, is that correct?
Yes.
You have Skyped with Rusty that morning, correct?
Yes.
That was something you did frequently, was it not?
Almost every day.
Okay. And when you would Skype with Rusty every day, how often would you typically Skype for?
Half hour in the morning.
Okay. So you would have been aware of what was going on in Rusty's life because you're literally coming into contact with him every day, correct?
Yes.
He was not employed at that time, was he, sir?
No.
He was trying to start up a new business called Star Voicemail, correct?
Yes.
Okay. You were familiar with that business, correct?
Yes.
To your knowledge, was Andrea familiar with that business?
Yes.
To your knowledge, was Andrea involved in helping that business get off the ground?
Yes.
Can you tell us, if you know, the extent of the effort that Andrea was making to help the business get off the ground?
No, I can't. I know she was involved, and I know that they talked about it, but I can't tell you that she spent 2 hours a week or 4 hours a week or 12 hours a week.
Okay. But you basically, when you said 2 hours a week, 4 hours a week, 12 hours a week, it was some period of time from what you understood
Yes.
every week. Is that correct, sir?
Yes.
Now, during that period of time, and how long had you been Skyping for 30 minutes every day, sir?
Since Sophia was about a year old, so that's about 5 years at that time.
Okay, so for a long time, correct?
Long time,
Okay.
every day.
And now did you Skype when Rusty and Andrea went on a cruise?
No.
Okay, that would have been when, sir, if you recall?
That would have been, the week before Rusty died.
Okay. But you were aware that they were going on that cruise, is that correct?
Yes.
To your knowledge, did they bring Sophia and Ian along with them, or did they just go off by themselves?
They left Ian at home with her parents.
Okay. So you had been in touch with your son literally every day, with some exceptions, obviously, the cruise being one, for an extended period of time, correct?
Yes.
And you were aware of what was going on with his life, right?
Yes.
Were you aware of any problems between he and Andrea on November 17th of 2010?
No.
Now, you get a phone call from Andrea on the morning of November the 18th of 2010, correct?
Yes.
You had said you had Skyped earlier that morning with Rusty, and then you were doing what you normally did.
Yes.
You were retired at that time, sir, correct?
Yes.
How long had you been retired at that time?
About 3 years.
What did you normally do after your retirement? What did you normally do in the morning when you didn't have to get up and go to work anymore?
After I had breakfast with Rusty, I might have another cup of coffee. I might read the newspaper, look at the television, do almost anything that you would do around your house.
Okay. Do you have a specific recollection of that particular morning, November the 18th, between the time when you would have stopped the Skype session with Rusty and when you would have gotten the phone call from Andrea?
Nothing special, just the normal stuff.
Nothing about that particular morning prior to getting the phone call that sticks out,
Nope.
correct? So while you have just said, here's what you might do, you do not know specifically what you had done that morning, correct?
No, I don't.
Was your wife at your home with you?
Yes,
And you get this call, how long does the call last?
30 seconds, 40 seconds, very short time.
Okay. And you said Andrea's voice was excited.
Yes,
Okay.
high-pitched and squeaky.
What?
High-pitched and squeaky.
High-pitched and squeaky.
Very excited voice.
Did she appear to be panicked?
No,
Now, high-pitched and squeaky sounds like someone who has just won a new car on Let's Make a Deal. Was that the kind of voice we're describing, sir?
we're describing somebody who's very excited.
Okay. Did there appear to be any sort of anxiety in her voice?
No, she was just excited.
Okay. Did she appear to be upset?
No,
Okay.
just
She
excited.
said, okay, so no, she wasn't upset, she wasn't excited, she didn't appear to be panic-stricken, is that correct?
No, I said she was excited, not panic-stricken.
Okay. And how long did you talk to her for, actually?
I said about 35, maybe 30, 40 seconds.
Okay. She said something to the effect of, Rusty's been shot, I'm so sorry, correct?
Yeah. Yes, sir.
What did you say in response?
She said she was going to Dunwoody Prep. I said, when you get to Dunwoody Prep, call me and tell me what's happening.
Okay. Did you ask any questions as to where Rusty had been shot, what part of his body he had been shot?
Nope.
Did you ask any questions concerning the circumstances under which Rusty had been shot?
Nope.
Did you ask any questions concerning how many times Rusty had been shot?
I assume she didn't know because she didn't tell me, so
I'm not asking that, sir. I'm asking, did you ask those questions?
no.
Did you ask Andrea if she knew who had shot Rusty?
No,
Why not?
because I assumed she didn't know any more than I do,
Why did you make that assumption?
because I didn't think she was involved in Rusty's shooting.
Okay. And at that time, you didn't even believe her, correct?
No, I did not believe anybody would shoot Rusty.
Okay. So you get a call from your daughter-in-law who tells you that your son has been shot on that morning, and your response is to simply not believe the communication or information she is conveying. Is that correct?
Yes,
I presume you immediately told your wife about this phone call, right?
absolutely.
Okay. And then you attempted to do a couple things to get in touch with folks, right?
Yes,
You attempted to call Rusty, right?
yes,
And you attempted to call Dunwoody Prep after getting their number from Directory Assistance, right?
yes,
You had testified in the trial of Hemi Newman, did you not?
yes.
Did you say anything about trying to call Rusty during the course of that testimony, sir?
I don't think so. I don't think the question was asked.
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, good point. Just for the purpose of discussion. Excuse me, sir, let me give you another exhibit sticker.
You ready?
Are we up to number 11 now?
I would have to confer with Kelly Carpenter, the court reporter. Kelly Carpenter, what number is he up to?
Number 11, okay, thank you.
Court reporter says it's number 11, therefore it's 11.
Now, do you have a specific recollection of whether or not you testified that you had attempted to call Rusty at Mr. Newman's trial?
I don't think I did.
Okay. Any particular reason why you did not note that particular detail?
Don't think the question was ever asked.
Okay. Do you remember testifying that about 20 minutes or 15 or 20 minutes later you called Dunwoody Prep?
Yes,
Okay. Do you remember being asked the question, after you got this phone call from Andrea, what did you do next? You remember being asked that?
yeah,
Okay. Do you remember answering, well, we waited a little bit, waited for her to call back?
What's the objection?
Mr. Clegg is reading from a document that hasn't been tendered into evidence. He's trying to refresh the witness's recollection, and you can show him the document and ask the question.
Response?
Your Honor, I'm using it to cross-examine the witness at this time. If the witness indicates that he does not remember the conversation, and I fully expect to attempt to refresh his memory. But I think I'm entitled, I have a good faith basis for asking these particular questions, and he is on cross-examination.
Well, he is on cross-examination, but if you are asking him about a document that you have, and basically, I think you're saying it's testimony he may have provided, you're going to have to show him that document. I'm going to sustain that objection.
Perfectly comfortable.
All right, you may approach.
Okay. Sir, let me show you what has been marked for purposes of identification as defense exhibit number 11. And you can start reading right here. Just read to yourself, okay? I mean, how about line 13, and then read down to line 21. And when you finish reading that to yourself, if you would let us know.
Okay.
Okay. And at that time, I guess, who was doing the examination? Was it Mr. James who was asking you the question?
Yes.
Okay. And he did ask you, after the phone call with Andrea, what did you do next, correct?
Right.
So when you say that you were not asked about Rusty's phone call, the bottom line is you were asked what you did after getting off the phone with Andrea, right?
Yep. Yes, sir.
And the first thing you did, quite frankly, was to try to call Rusty, right?
Yes.
But that was not reflected in your testimony,
Nope.
was it?
Nope.
And in fact, what you said instead was, we waited about 15 to 20 minutes, right?
I waited 15 or 2. That's what this says.
And so you just sat around for 15 or 20 minutes waiting for Andrea to get back in touch?
I guarantee you, Mr. Clegg, we did not just sit around.
I'm sorry, sir, I can't hear you. I apologize, my fault.
We did not just sit around.
Okay. Well, I mean, but that is what you testified you did previously, right?
I said we waited a little bit.
Okay. And at some point you called the newspaper? Is that correct?
Later in the day, yes.
Okay. And was that to put an obituary into the paper?
No. It was to cancel the paper. We were going to Atlanta.
Oh, okay. Now, so you get this phone call, and now at that time, Steve, Rusty's older brother, is on his way to go to vacation, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you find out early on that Rusty has, you are told by Andrea that Rusty has been shot, correct?
Yes, sir.
Do you immediately call Steve and tell him, you might want to hold off a little bit before we figure out what's going on?
No, I waited till I talked to Dunwoody Prep, so I was confirmed that Rusty was shot.
Now, Steve was going on a fairly lengthy vacation, was he not?
Yes?
Steve lived in the Cleveland area, did he not?
Yes?
It was a vacation that would necessitate him flying from Cleveland to O'Hare in Chicago, correct?
Yes?
And then flying to Hawaii, correct?
Yes.
So once he got on the plane to Hawaii, that was going to be a long way to go if he had to turn back around, correct?
Yes, sir.
When is it that you actually communicated anything to Steve?
When he was on the ground, when the plane was leaving Chicago.
Okay. So that was at 10:38, right?
Yes.
Why didn't you attempt to communicate with him earlier than that, sir?
Because I didn't want to alarm him. I didn't know what was going on. All I knew is that I had the phone call from Andrea, and I didn't have a confirmation that he was shot. And I was really trying to find out if he was shot in the leg, toenail, or in his arm, instead of being shot multiple times.
So you had no knowledge at the time you were communicating with Steve, telling him to go on his vacation or not telling him to go on his vacation. Is that correct, sir?
That's right.
Okay. Now, did you have any reason to disbelieve Andrea on that particular morning when she told you that Rusty had been shot?
I didn't believe anybody would shoot my son.
Okay. But did you have any specific reason to disbelieve Andrea?
As I've said, I didn't believe that anybody would shoot Rusty, so no, I did not believe that he was shot until I was confirmed by Dunwoody Prep.
I apologize, sir, but let me ask the question one more time. Did you have any reason to disbelieve Andrea?
Nope.
Now, you called Dunwoody Prep, right?
Yes, sir.
Who is it that you spoke to at Dunwoody Prep?
Don't know.
Okay. Do you have any idea of the identity of the individual that you spoke to?
No.
Okay. Did you ask for that person? Who did you ask for when you called?
Whoever answered the phone is who I talked to.
Okay. And did you make any attempt to find out that person's name?
No.
Any particular reason why not?
I didn't care who was answering the phone. I only cared about the condition of my son.
And at that time, what did you ask when somebody picked up the phone?
I identified myself as Rusty's father, and I told him I wanted to know what had happened to Rusty.
Okay. Just to make sure we understand each other here, sir. When you first talked to someone at Dunwoody Prep, you did not say anything at all about Rusty having been shot. Is that correct?
That's correct.
You had no time during the course of that conversation when you first picked up the phone, you never said, "Has my son been shot?"
No, I said, and I asked the lady who answered the phone what had happened to Rusty.
You never used the word shot when you first communicated with the folks
No.
at Dunwoody Prep.
No, I did not.
And how long was that after the phone call you had had with Andrea Sneiderman?
About 15 or 20 minutes.
And she had definitely used the word, "Rusty has been shot. I'm so, so sorry."
Yes, sir.
Correct?
Yes, sir.
Did you talk to, or how did you know to get in touch with Atlanta Medical Center?
Someone at Dunwoody Prep in the background, a male voice, said that they had taken Rusty to the Atlanta Medical Center and gave me the phone number.
Okay. And did that person actually get on the phone?
No, he was in the background.
Okay. And did the person who was on the phone talking to you, was that a male or a female?
That was a lady.
Okay. And did that lady convey that information to you as well?
Yes.
Okay. And you were given the phone by the people at Dunwoody Prep?
Yes.
Or the phone number for Atlanta Medical Center
Yes.
by the people at Dunwoody Prep, correct?
There was a male voice in the background who gave it to me.
Okay. Now, was that person actually on the phone, or you could just hear it in the background?
We could hear him.
Okay. So if I understand correctly, the person actually speaking to you did not give you that information, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And you then got in touch with the Atlanta Medical Center, right?
Yes, sir.
Had you heard from Herb Greenberg at any time?
No.
Did Herb Greenberg, Andrea's father, ever call you up and tell you that Rusty had been taken to Atlanta Medical Center?
No.
Did you have any communication with Herb Greenberg at all that morning before finding out that Rusty was deceased?
No.
Did you have any communication with any other member of the Greenberg family that morning before finding out that Rusty was deceased?
No.
You guys got to Atlanta the evening of the 18th, correct?
The afternoon, yes.
And what was Andrea's emotional state at that time?
She was very upset.
I'm sorry?
She was very upset.
Could you describe some of the characteristics of her behavior at that time that led you to draw that conclusion, sir?
She was always in another room. She wasn't with us. She was with her brother or her mother, and they were just holding her, and we didn't really talk to her much.
Was she crying?
I guess so.
Was she shaking?
Didn't see it.
Did you attempt to comfort her?
Weren't allowed near her.
You were not allowed near her?
No.
Okay. Who was it who did not allow you near her?
Her mother, father, and brother.
Okay. Now, you were there the next day when the Dunwoody detective showed up, right?
Yes.
And you were there when they questioned Andrea at length about any information she could provide, correct?
Yes.
You were there during the course of the interview when she gave the name of Hemi Newman to the police, were you not?
Yes.
And that was in response to a police question, was it not?
Yes.
Do you remember the specific question that it was in response to, sir?
No.
Did you subsequently meet Hemi Newman yourself?
Yes.
Did you see him at the funeral?
No.
Did you see him when the family was sitting show?
Yes.
And I believe we've had one witness describe that, but out of an abundance of caution, is that a Jewish tradition?
Yes.
And tell us exactly what that is, sir.
It's a period of mourning that is observed in the house, and people come and pay their respects.
How long does that go on for?
7 days. Well, depends.
Okay.
Usually 7 days.
How long did Andrea's sitting Shiva go on for, if you recall?
7 days.
And when does it begin?
Begins the day of the burial.
Which would have been the Sunday after the death of Rusty, which would have been 21st, I guess?
something like that.
Did you remain for the entirety of that particular period of time?
No,
Now, you had seen Rusty and Andrea and the kids earlier that month, had you not, sir?
yes,
And you had seen them at your mom, was it your mom?
my mother,
Your mother's 95th birthday party in the Washington, D.C. area, right?
yes,
They came in mass, that is, all four of them came, right?
yes,
Sophia would have been 5 at that point, Ian would have been 2 at that point, correct?
no, he'd have been 1 3/4 or something.
I'm sorry.
It would have been 1 3/4. No, he would have been 2. His birthday's in October.
Okay, and did you notice any sort of tension between them at the time
No.
of that particular function?
No,
Okay. Anything out of the ordinary did you notice between the two of them during the time of that birthday party?
no,
Did you get to spend much time with them when they were up in Washington?
not really.
Okay. Did you get to spend much time with the kids?
A little bit.
Okay.
It's hard for a
Now,
lot of people.
You did hear back from Andrea sometime after you found out that Rusty was deceased. Is that correct, sir?
Yes,
Okay. She did call you up and ask for your permission to bury Rusty in Georgia, correct?
yes,
And you granted that permission, correct?
absolutely. Yes, sir.
And you again were present at the actual funeral, correct?
Yes,
Is there a tradition in the Jewish religion of some sort of remembrance ceremony 30 days or so after a person is buried?
it's optional.
I'm sorry?
It's not usual, but you can do it.
Okay. And to your knowledge, did Andrea do that in this case?
Yes,
Were you invited to attend that particular function?
yes,
Did you in fact do so?
no.
Now, what communication did you have with Andrea during the month of December of 2010, sir?
There were a couple of calls. That's about all.
Okay. Did you Skype with her?
No,
Not at all?
no,
Not a single Skype between
no,
you and Andrea? How about with the kids?
no,
So there are virtually no Skypes at all in the month of December of 2010.
no. I lost my son on November 18th.
I understand, sir.
Okay.
I'm just asking, are you certain of that fact?
Yes,
Were you interviewed by Detective Thompson of the Dunwoody Police Department on November the 23rd?
I'm not sure what date it was, but I did have an interview with him.
You did voluntarily go into the police department by yourself, right?
Yes,
Yes, you went with your wife and your son Steve, right?
yes, all three of us.
But all three of you were interviewed separately
Yes.
and distinctly from one another.
Yes,
Can you recall how long that particular interview took, sir?
half hour, 45 minutes, something like that.
During the course of the interview, did you mention to the police the substance of your phone call with Andrea?
No,
You were subsequently, you talked to the police on the 4th of January, did you not? Of 2011 when Newman was arrested?
I talked to Deputy Chief Sides, yes.
Okay. During that particular phone conversation, did you mention that particular conversation, the substance of the phone conversation you had had with Andrea?
No,
You talked to Investigator Potter of the DeKalb District Attorney's Office on or about January the 13th of 2011, did you not?
probably. Probably, I don't
Okay.
recall it.
I know you don't need to, I'm not
I
asking
have-
about, the exact date is not important. Did you talk to Investigator Potter
Yep.
sometime in early January?
Yes,
Did you mention to Investigator Potter anything about the substance of the conversation that you had had with Andrea?
no,
At some point, you do, let me ask you this. Did Andrea know how much life insurance she had?
no.
How is it that you know that she did not know how much life insurance she had?
The night when the Dunwoody police came over on the 19th, they did a search of Rusty's and Andrea's office upstairs, and going through the files, I found the bills for the life insurance policy. So I knew, and she didn't know.
She had no idea the extent of any sort of life insurance.
That's what
on
she
her
said.
husband. Is that correct?
That's what her father said.
Okay. And that you found the policies yourself, is that correct?
I found the bills for the policies, yes.
Okay. Did the documentation you had shed light on how much insurance there was?
Yes,
Okay. And did you then convey that to Andrea?
No, to her father.
Okay. When the police came on the 19th, if I'm understanding correctly, they were allowed to search
They
a
had a search.
portion of the house. Is that correct?
They had a search warrant.
Okay. Do you recall how long that search would have lasted, sir?
Hour and a half, maybe.
And were you present during the time that they were conducting this search in the house?
In the office, yes.
Yes. To your knowledge or recollection, did Andrea consent to that particular search?
Yes.
And that was her home, right?
Yes.
Her and Rusty's home, right?
Yes.
And when you say an office, was that an office for just Rusty, or was it an office for Andrea and Rusty?
It was for both of them.
Okay. Now, at some point in May of 2011, you are requested by the DeKalb County District Attorney's Office to come down to Decatur and be interviewed, right?
Yes.
And you were asked as well as your wife, right?
Yes.
And you communicated that back to Andrea and said, we can get together and see the kids, right?
Yes.
Did you come?
Yes.
Were you interviewed by representatives of the DeKalb County District Attorney's Office
Yes.
in May of 2011?
Yes.
Was it not in this building, but in the building next door that is connected?
Yes.
And who all did you talk to?
I talked to Don Gary, and I talked to the district attorney.
Okay, and when you said the district attorney, the elected district attorney is Mr. James, correct?
Correct.
And you talked to Mr. Geary.
Yes.
Did you talk to Mr. Potter, the investigator, as well?
I don't recall if I talked to Mr. Potter that day.
And they specifically asked you to come down for an interview, correct?
Yes.
It wasn't a situation where you wanted to come down and find out what the situation was vis-a-vis the case. They asked
There was
you-
some of that.
Okay. Well, Mr. Newman had been arrested at that point, right?
Yes.
Mr. Newman had been arrested for 3.5 months, I guess, right?
Yes.
So, I mean, primarily, they were asking you to come down so they could talk to you, right?
Yes, and we wanted to talk to them.
Did the subject of Andrea's conversation with you on the phone from the day of November the 18th of 2010 come up during the course of those interviews?
I don't recall.
You have no idea?
I don't recall.
Okay. When you say you do not recall, does that mean you do not recall the substance of those interviews? Or does it mean that you simply don't know if that subject came up?
I don't know if that subject came up.
Did you mention the subject during the course of the interview?
I don't recall.
What did they ask you?
We talked about the case. We talked about what was going on in the case. We talked about lots of different things, but I don't recall whether the phone call came up in the discussion.
Okay. But at some point, the phone call did come up, right?
The phone call did come up.
When was it?
I don't recall.
Okay. Was it before or after the trip down here in May?
I don't recall.
Okay. You recall, or let me ask you this, was the trip down here to meet with Mr. Geary and Mr. James, was that before May 25th or after May 25th?
It was before May 25th.
And do you recall when you actually were talking about the substance of this phone call, who were you talking to?
I believe I was talking to Don Gary.
Okay. And do you recall, can you give us any indication as to the time frame?
No.
None whatsoever.
It was before that email, but other than that, that's all I recall.
Did you tell him before that email what Andrea said?
Yes.
When is that?
Before May 26th, whatever that email is.
And was that, to your recollection, preserved in any sort of form? Was your conversation recorded?
No.
Okay. You weren't physically there at that time, right?
I wasn't physically...
Were you physically there, or were you talking to him on the phone when you had this conversation, sir?
The conversation with whom?
With Don Geary.
Oh, I thought you were talking about the conversation with Andrea. Okay,
No.
the conversation with Don Gary was probably over the phone.
Okay. Probably over the phone. Does that mean you do not know?
I don't remember that.
Okay. But the bottom line is, on May the 25th, you went ahead and prepared an email, right?
Yes.
You sent a copy to your son, Steve, right?
I sent a copy to my son, Steve, on everything that relates to this.
Now, Ms. Cross asked you about litigation, correct?
Yes.
Is there any litigation going on between Steve and Mrs. Sneiderman.
Yes,
Okay, and is that in Steve's capacity as the executor of the estate?
yes.
Okay, and is Steve trying to get,
Objection, Your Honor, to the relevance of this.
Well, is this relevant? And don't, you're going to the content. I just want to know why this is relevant. Because you're talking about his
Your Honor,
son's lawsuit.
I'd love to respond, but I don't feel comfortable doing so in front of the jury because I don't.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, step into the jury room. Mr. Deputy, where's my deputy? Would you assist them, please? Mr. Snyder, will you step out for a minute, please? Yes, sir.
Your Honor, wait till the door's shut.
Jury's out the room. Yes, sir.
Here is why I want to ask this question. We believe the evidence will show from phone records that there was communication between Don Sneiderman, Steve Sneiderman, and Esther Panich. And Esther Panich was in communication with Steve Sneiderman, not with necessarily Don Sneiderman. And then Don and Steve were in communication with one another before the email went out on the day of May the 25th. That suggests to me that there is a possibility that someone told Mr. Sneiderman what to put in the email. I'm exploring that topic on cross-examination. I believe I'm entitled to a thorough and shifting cross-examination, and it goes directly to his credibility as to whether or not the words that he claims were said were actually said.
Response?
Your Honor, Mr. Clegg is more than welcome to ask the witness if anyone told him what to put in the email. That's a direct question that's relevant, and that goes to the witness's bias and the credibility of his testimony. What Mr. Clegg can't do, I believe, is in a roundabout way inject the litigation and potential bias of the relationship between another party outside this witness. If he wants to ask this witness anything about his bias towards the defendant, I think that's fair. If he's looking to inject somebody else's relationship with the defendant, someone who's not a state's witness or certainly not the witness on the stand, I think that's not relevant at this time, and we object.
Response?
Your Honor, the only thing I would note was Ms. Cross herself interjected the issue of whether there was pending litigation into this particular trial.
Well,
And I understand that it dealt with litigation involving him, but at the same time, given what I believe the evidence would show, that there was communication between Steve Sneiderman, the guy actually bringing the suit on behalf of the estate, Esther Panich, the attorney who is representing Mr. Sneiderman in that case, and Don Sneiderman on that particular day before the email is sent, seems to me very relevant.
well, Mr. Flagg, let me respond this way. I'm going to sustain the objection as far as to the last question you asked pertaining to the lawsuit between Steve Sneiderman and Andrew Sneiderman. But as far as those direct questions you want to ask him about who may have provided him language, you can ask him those questions. So I'm not limiting you in that regard.
Okay.
So what you actually, the point that you actually got to at the end of your presentation, I have no problem with that. I'll overrule that objection. You can ask those questions directly of him.
Okay, I'm trying to figure out exactly what I can ask and ask.
Well,
and I understand
I can
the court's
take it.
position is ask what you want, Mr. Clegg. I'll sustain the objection and the state can object, correct?
That's right.
Okay.
However, as far as the last question pertaining to the litigation involving Steve Sneiderman and Andrew Sneiderman, that's what I'm sustaining. If you want to ask him anything, and I understand your quote-unquote the ultimate point that you want, you can go into that area because you indicated that something may show and may not show that someone else may have suggested the language in the email.
Okay.
You are not limited whatsoever about his action, his conduct, what he may or may not have heard.
So I am entitled, if I understand correctly, to ask questions about whether he had contact with Steve Sneiderman on that day, whether he, to his knowledge, Steve Sneiderman had contact with Esther Panich on that particular day, and whether anything was told to him as to what the content of the email ought to be. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Thank you, sir. Just I don't want to get in trouble. I don't want to ask an inappropriate question in front of the jury. So.
No, you can, as I said, you are not limited at all about questions about what he may or may not have, information you received. The objection came on the reference to, quote unquote, the lawsuit directed with Steve Sneiderman. That's what I'm sustaining. So
okay, sure,
you're not limited. You're entitled to a thorough and sifting examination, and you can ask as many questions as you deem appropriate.
Thank you, Your Honor.
We are here for the duration.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Bring in the jury. That's it. Hey, Ms. Cross, would you have your investigator bring in Mr. Sneiderman?
I will, Your Honor, thank you.
Or whoever is assisting you? You can come on back up, Mr. Sneiderman. Come on in, ladies and gentlemen, make yourself comfortable. You can be seated in your seat. Come on in, ladies and gentlemen, make yourself comfortable. You may be seated in your seat. You may be seated, Mr. Sneiderman. Come on in, ladies and gentlemen, make yourself comfortable. Come on in, ladies and gentlemen, make yourself comfortable. You may be seated in your seat, or you can find your favorite seat. Sit where you want. Come on in, ladies and gentlemen, make yourself comfortable. All right. Mr. Clegg, we're back on the record. You may continue, sir, with those instructions.
Thank you very much.
You're quite welcome.
Mr. Sneiderman, directing your attention to May the 25th, the day that you sent the email to Don Geary. What time was it that you sent that email?
It's time-stamped, I don't know.
Okay. Let me just see if I can refresh your memory here.
Yes, sir. You may approach.
Mr. Clegg?
What number is that, Kelly?
Mr. Clegg, it's number 53, I think.
Oh, you have it right there. Thank you, Ms.
It
Thomas.
has not yet been amended.
Okay. May I approach?
You may. Yes, sir.
Okay. Sir, let me show you what has been marked for purposes of identification as State's Exhibit number 53, and ask if you recognize what that document is, sir.
Yes, this is the email to Don Geary,
Okay. And does that reflect the time that that email would have been sent, sir?
2:45 in the afternoon.
Prior to sending that email, had you had any communication or contact with your son Steve on that particular day?
I don't recall if I talked to him that day or not. I talked to him almost every day.
Okay. Is it fair to say that you do not recall what to Steve, whether you did or not?
That's correct.
Okay. Do you recall having any communication with Steve on that day about the specific contents of what you were going to put into the email?
No.
Okay. Did you talk to Steve at some point prior to that day about the specific content of the information you were going to put into the email?
No, he never asked me what I was going to put in the email. We talked about the fact that I needed to send Don Geary an email.
Okay. So you and your son, and what is the time frame? Is this after you get back from Atlanta?
Yes.
Meeting with Mr. Geary?
Yes.
And you tell your son, you're giving him an update on the investigation, correct?
Well,
Status of the case.
he had been with us in Atlanta.
Okay. And at some point, you tell him, I'm going to be communicating with Don Geary, and I'm going to be sending him an email, correct?
Correct.
But you do not communicate the nature of the information that you're going to put into the email?
No.
Okay. Any particular reason why not?
He didn't need to know.
He didn't need to know?
No.
Had you told him the contents of the email prior to your sending it?
No.
Did you tell him about the conversation you had with Andrea on the morning of November the 18th of 2010 before you sent that email to Don Geary?
Probably.
Possibly yes, possibly no?
Yeah.
So you communicated with Don Geary before you communicated with your own son, right?
Yep.
But since he didn't need to know, you nonetheless sent him a copy of that email.
Yes.
Correct, sir? I'm presuming you would have had some conversations with him after that information was conveyed to Mr. Geary, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now, the second portion of what Andrea is supposed to have said, I'm so sorry.
Yes, sir.
He testified today that when she calls you on January the 4th of 2011, she used the exact same terminology, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And what else did she say on January the 4th?
That's all she said. So I'm so sorry.
Okay. And was she excited at that time? Her tone of voice excited?
No,
Okay. Was she distraught?
I don't know. She was crying, and she was saying, I'm so sorry, but that's all.
Okay. You had told Investigator Potter back in January of 2011 about the so sorry comment at the time of the January 4th conversation, had you not?
Yes.
You had already told that to the...
No, wait. On the excuse me, if you're going to try to do this, then I'll have to do some other things. There was no discussion on January 4th with Potter because that was the arresting date in which I talked to Deputy Chief Sides.
Okay. I didn't say there was a conversation on January the 4th.
Yes, you did.
Did you talk to Potter sometime early in January of 2011?
Yes.
Did you tell Potter in the course of that conversation, referring back to what Andrea said on January 4th, that she said, I'm so sorry?
I don't remember that.
Okay. I am going to show you a document, sir, and take a minute to find it here.
You may. Take as much time as you need.
Thank you, sir. Oh, here it is.
What number is this? Is
This would
number
be
12?
Defense Exhibit number 12, Your Honor.
All right.
May I approach
You may.
Okay. I am going to show you, sir, what has been marked as Defendant's Exhibit number 12. And again, I'm going to ask you to read to yourself. This first is a bullet point right here on the first page. And then there is a little sentence here. I suppose a paragraph, but a sentence. You can just read that sentence, okay? Tell me when you're finished reading it.
Okay?
Okay. Does that refresh your memory as to whether or not you told, excuse me, Mark Potter, Investigator Potter, about Andrea's saying, I'm so sorry on the evening of January the 4th?
On the evening of January 4th, yes.
Okay. And again, just because it's in a report doesn't make it so. Does that refresh your memory?
That's what I told you before.
Okay. Now, when you told him that that's what Andrea said on January the 4th, did you also tell him, you know, darndest thing, that's the same thing that Andrea said on November the 18th?
No.
Any particular reason why not?
No.
Did you remembered the conversation on November the 18th, did you not?
Yes.
You remembered that the exact terminology used on November the 18th was the same that was used on January the 4th, correct?
Yes.
It is, after all, etched in your mind forever, correct, sir?
Yes, sir.
How much contact did you have? Well, let me ask you this. Was there a gravestone that was prepared for Rusty some point in 2011, sir?
A gravestone, yes.
Okay. And did Andrea invite you to come down to attend the unveiling of that particular gravestone, sir?
Yes, sir.
Did you do so?
No.
Was there a attempt to set up a scholarship fund at the University of Indiana for Rusty?
Yes.
Okay. Did Andrea invite you to participate over the phone through a discussion concerning that, sir?
Yes.
She did not?
Yes, she did.
She did. Did you in fact participate in that discussion?
No, I did not.
Okay. And did you make any contribution to that particular scholarship?
That's private.
I'm sorry?
That's my personal contributions, and what I do with my money is not relevant to this
Okay.
case.
Thank you, sir.
I want to say, you got to answer the question. I'm sorry. Either you can say yes, no, you can explain, but you have to answer the question.
Okay. No, I did not.
Okay. Did you communicate to Andrea, did you communicate with Andrea by Skype in January, if you recall, sir?
No, I did not.
Okay. Need a fresh batch of stickers. I think
You
I've
may.
got some right here.
Kelly Kaufman will provide you as many stickers as you need.
Okay, and I guess I'm up to
13.
number 13, Your Honor.
You are.
May I approach you with?
Yes, sir. You may approach.
Okay. Sir, I am going to show you a document that has been marked for purposes of identification as, wait a second, I got the wrong one, never mind.
So we're not doing.
I'm going back here.
We're not doing 13?
I've got a document that I'm not sure has anything to do with anything, so I'm going to ixnay that one and put 13 on this one.
So this is going to be the 13 now?
This will be 13, yes, sir.
All right.
Okay, now
So that'll be-
I will show the new 13 in this cross.
And that'll be, I'm sorry, your turn with Ixnay? It'll be Ixnay.
I'm sorry, what's your?
You said Ixnay, I don't know what that.
Ixnay, that means
I'll tell the
good riddance to the previous document. We will be sticking it into the bottom of the pile. sir.
All right, that'll be fine.
Okay. Okay. May I approach you?
Yes, sir. With that 13, yes, sir.
Yes, this is 13. Okay. Let me show you a document that has been marked for purposes of identification as Defendant's Exhibit number 13. Would you read the bottom portion of that particular document, sir?
It's just a quick note about how much we enjoyed seeing the kids and talking to you this morning on Skype.
I'm sorry?
We talked to the kids on Skype.
Okay. And you address so that does refresh your memory, right?
Yep.
Okay. And you addressed the email to Andrea, did you not?
Yes.
And what did you tell Andrea in that email?
Just a quick note on how much we enjoyed seeing you and talking to the kids on Skype.
Okay.
So I did talk to her on Skype.
Okay. Just a quick note about how much we enjoyed seeing and talking to you this morning on Skype.
Your Honor,
I'm sorry,
I have-
1 second. What's the objection?
My
If there is
objection is
one.
that document hasn't been tendered or entered. I don't have an objection to it being tendered and entered into evidence, but it just has not been yet. Subject
Okay,
for
I
it's
will.
read to the jury.
All right, if you
Ms.
could,
Crowe, I will tender state Defense Exhibit number 13 at this time.
any objection to number 13 being
No,
entered?
Your Honor.
All right, 13 will be entered at this point in time, and actually, this is an excellent stopping point. Ladies and gentlemen, we're sending you home for the evening. Let me give you these instructions. You've been, and first of all, let me thank you. You've been very attentive all day. You're going to leave your notes there in the jury room and send them face down. No one's going to look at your notes besides you, and if you need additional notepads, we'll provide those to you tomorrow. Do not discuss the case. I'll allow anyone to discuss the case with you. Once I release you for this evening, do not remain upon the floor, because I don't want you to interact with anyone you should not interact with. Do not read or look at any media coverage pertaining to this case. Do not go upon the internet and do any research about this case. Do not blog about this case while it is ongoing. All the evidence will come to you in the form of sworn testimony that is presented during the course of the trial and or any physical evidence that is introduced during the course of the trial. Do not go to any location that may or may not have been made reference to. You're more than welcome to bring something to snack and or eat with you during for the morning session. Do not overindulge in any type of alcohol tonight, and do not consume any alcoholic beverages during the lunch breaks. The deputy at this point in time will turn back over to your smartphones, iPhones, and iPads. At this point in time, you can check your messages, but however, do not communicate with anyone about this case, either in text or any other type of communication way. The lawyers and the parties cannot talk and interact with you. I don't ever want you to think they're being rude or discourteous. Now, I know, unrelated to this case, I'm going to have something earlier in the morning, but as I indicated, if I'm in session with something else, don't worry about that. You just come on into the courtroom, have a seat there in the jury room, and we will proceed tomorrow morning. We're going to start tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. Now, you can be early, but you cannot be late. So be here in a timely fashion. I believe there was a forecast that it may be raining later this week, which means, I just mentioned that because you just need to leave from wherever you come from in enough time so that you can park in the garage, come to the metal detector, and be physically on the floor so that we can actually start and begin in a timely fashion. All right, that's the only reason I mentioned the weather report. I just checked that just to give you those additional information so to make sure that you understand you can be early, but you can't be late. We're in recess till 9 o'clock. All right.